Israeli forces have completed the encirclement of Rafah in southern Gaza, escalating military operations as the region faces a growing humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has praised US President Donald Trump for his understanding of the Ukraine conflict, calling it a crucial step towards resolving global tensions. Welcome to this special coverage from Qnews. Stay tuned for further analysis and insights. Israeli occupation forces have completed the encirclement of Rafah in southern Gaza as part of a broader operation to seize more territory in the occupied enclave. The military said the move is accompanied by large-scale evacuations of the civilian population. Footage released by the Israeli army showed troops moving through rubble and entering empty buildings in Rafah. Since resuming the aggression on March 18, the Israeli military has issued repeated evacuation orders to hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, forcing many into increasingly limited areas along the coast. Gaza-based health authorities have announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip climbed to over 50,900 and over 116,400 wounded. Medical sources reported that at least 21 civilians were killed and 64 others injured in Gaza within the last 24 hours as a result of the ongoing Israeli genocide in the region. The Gaza Media Office has issued a warning about an impending environmental disaster, citing the ongoing destruction of water and electricity infrastructure by Israeli forces. Over 90% of the region's water and sewage systems have been destroyed, raising concerns about a potential health and environmental crisis that could impact areas beyond Gaza. The United Nations Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Sigrid Kaag, says more than 60,000 children under the age of 5 in Gaza are currently suffering from malnutrition. Speaking on the lines of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, Kaag noted that humanitarian aid delivered by the UN during the ceasefire period successfully reached those in need. However, she warned that since mid-March, the flow of aid into Gaza has been halted, deepening the humanitarian crisis in the occupied enclave. Foreign ministers and representatives from countries at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum have praised the efforts of Egypt, Qatar, and the United States in facilitating a ceasefire, describing these actions as crucial for advancing reconstruction in Gaza. In a joint statement issued at the conclusion of a ministerial meeting, participants urged for the unification of Gaza with the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, under the Palestinian Authority. They stressed the need for both political and financial support for the Palestinian Authority to help it fulfill its responsibilities across Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories. For further analysis, we're joined from occupied Jerusalem by the member of Palestinian National Civil Society, Ratiba El-Natsa. Ms. Ratiba, thank you so much for joining us on this special coverage. And let me start by asking you, what are the potential long-term consequences of Israel's complete encirclement of Rafah, and how might this affect the civilian population in Gaza?
Good evening to you and all the viewers. First, of course, evacuating Rafah of all the populations is tampering with the demographic distribution of population in Gaza, targeting taking control over the enclave and making Rafah an isolated area is the desire of Israel, which will prevent the free use of the Rafah crossing. and also the borders with Egypt, between Egypt and Palestine. Israel will be the only one controlling the strip, and also the only corridor out of the strip, and to communicate with the rest of the world. And therefore the siege imposed on Rafah today, and turning Rafah into an isolated area, will also facilitate the Israeli scheme to evacuate the strip as the only controller of the last outlet to the strip to the entire world through Egypt. This will not only reflect on the demographic distribution of the population or achieving the Israeli scheme, it will also cut the main line of support of food to the Gaza Strip. And I'm not only talking about the food supplies through the Rafah crossing, but also the agricultural lands and plots for the Gaza Strip, as the large portion of the Rafah lands is the food reserve for the Gaza population, giving them the essential food supplies.
Adding to this, with the Israeli occupation forces destroying the water and electricity infrastructure within Gaza, if you can expand on the significance of this humanitarian crisis and what are the immediate health risks to the population?
We're talking about 1.5 Gazans suffering from diseases related directly to the lack of water or the contaminated water in the Gaza Strip. We're talking about diseases related to bowels, and there are a lot of health reflections. We're talking today, access to clean water is impossible inside the strip, especially with the targeted water stations and water treatment plants, as water is now mixed with contaminated water. We're talking about a complete health catastrophe due to the spread of the diseases due to the lack of water or the use of contaminated water. We're talking about thirst as a collective punishment tool. Gaza, each individual only gets to have a liter of water a day in the Gaza Strip, as the a normal human needs 2 to 3 liters a day only for drinking, not to mention the need to clean or wash up. It is of course a hygiene catastrophe, facilitating transmitted and communicable diseases to spread. Of course, water is an essential component for life, as stated in the Holy Quran. Of course, without water there will be no human living or even plant living, which is threatening the biological circle or the ecological circle, in the strip.
Now, taking all of this into account and given the large-scale evacuations of civilians you've mentioned, what are the main challenges faced by international organizations in delivering aid to the region, especially since the flow of aid has been halted since mid-March?
We're talking about a 40-day of a complete halt of assistance, which is the longest period witnessed by the Gaza Strip without any type of humanitarian aid access. We're talking about 65% of the Gaza Strip classified as red zones, meaning as dangerous zones for workers to operate, and there are 18% of the lands require coordination, operation coordination. All humanitarian relief workers, those that provide food, meals, are working under a lot of hazards without any real coordination. The potential to reach populations is very difficult due to the constant evacuation of a number of families. So classifying these families is now very difficult. Even families remaining in the same area for a long period how difficult due to the constant bombing everywhere. We're talking about two main hurdles. One is the constant displacement and the inability to stay in one place for a long period of time, and the second hurdle is related to the relief aid to the relief workers. They are being constantly targeted by the IDF, and they also targeting now social kitchens and the relief workers in different fields, and food storages are being targeted over and over by the IDF. And I'm talking about these substantial obstacles that completely hinder the access of humanitarian aid. Each time a relief worker moves out of their house to their work, they are targeted.
Ms. Ratiba, how do you interpret the statements from the Antalya Diplomacy Forum that called for the unification of Gaza with the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority?
Egypt is playing an integral role running the negotiations and pushing for the the day next to the war for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. It is leading the Arab and Islamic efforts through the reconstruction initiative, which is adopted on the Islamic and Arab levels, especially after the Macron visit to Cairo and holding talks regarding the items of this agenda. These are now realistic proposals for the day next to war, which is encouraging the US administration to provide more guarantees to pressure Israel into negotiations of the second phase of the ceasefire in a few days, and Israel won't place more obstacles. These efforts cannot be overlooked, and we are aware that we are on a top priority for Egypt.
Speaking of the U.S. administration, Trump has said that progress is being made to reach a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. I have to ask you, are we getting closer to reaching a ceasefire agreement in Gaza from your point of view?
If we're not surprised by Israel, as always, by efforts to fail these efforts, we are aware that Trump gave Netanyahu a time frame to halt the hostilities, and he requested Netanyahu and he said that the United States will take over the negotiation efforts, and even regarding the end of the war on the Gaza Strip. So I think that the U.S. interests in the Middle East and the Trump desire to have some kind of stability so that he can operate his economic investments is highly important for the United States, and it is the main incentive for the U.S. to pressure Israel to commit to the second phase negotiations. But we have always this fear that the Israeli side might have some surprises to fail the Egyptian or the U.S. efforts to reach an agreement.
From Occupied Jerusalem, member of Palestinian National Civil Society, Ratiba El-Natsha, thank you so much for joining us here on Qnews. And now we move to more insights into the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has praised U.S. President Donald Trump for what he described as a better understanding of the Ukraine conflict than any other Western leader. Speaking at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum in southern Turkey, Lavrov emphasized that resolving the root causes of conflicts, including the Ukraine situation, is essential for lasting peace. He noted that Trump had been the first Western leader to repeatedly assert that bringing Ukraine into NATO was a huge mistake and one of the core issues fueling the conflict. Lavrov's comments came after talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff in St. Petersburg on Friday, focusing on efforts to find a peace agreement. A Russian drone strike on Kiev early Saturday injured 3 people and ignited fires at multiple warehouses, according to the city's military administration. The overnight attack lit up the capital's skies as air defense systems engaged incoming drones. Authorities confirmed 3 warehouses were set ablaze during the assault. Ukraine's Air Force reported that air defenses intercepted 56 out of 88 drones launched by Russia across the country. An additional 24 drones were diverted through electronic warfare measures. Damage was recorded in 5 regions across central, eastern, and southern Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign minister emphasized that Ukraine's NATO membership should not be off the agenda. Speaking at the Antalya Diplomatic Forum, he highlighted that Ukraine's battle-tested army would provide the cheapest possible contribution to transatlantic security. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has consistently opposed Ukraine's NATO membership, demanding limits on Ukraine's military size and claiming full control over 4 Ukrainian regions, despite not fully occupying them. With Russia controlling nearly 20% of Ukraine's territory and continuing its advances, the Kremlin insists that Ukraine should make concessions in any potential negotiations.
That this system, international system, is dysfunctional. Via the evidence of this system is unjust. We need additional tools of enforcement. We need reforms.
Now we're going to move to a live coverage to the speech by the Lebanese President, Joseph Aoun.
Because it is giving an extra excuse for those who are not even waiting for an excuse to assault Lebanon. It is undermining the Lebanese state before the world and the neighboring countries who only want to help us. It is very important to unify all Lebanese to condemn such practices and reject such crimes. Even the Shiite Islamic Supreme Council condemned these operations. It is a very appreciated step and with great significance. Today, I'm here to address you and tell you it is high time to learn the last lesson from 50 years of violence. It is high time to unify our forces protected by a sovereign state, a sovereign just state that we see today, the state arising from the will of the Lebanese people to prevail the peace and prosperity of all Lebanese people segments. And if we all agree that any arms outside of the state frameworks will endanger Lebanese interests for more than one reason, it is high time for all of us to say those who protect Lebanon will be only the Lebanese state and formal forces such as the army. It is high time for all of us to commit to the Lebanese state. We need to learn from the 50-year war, and we need to tell for all who left, for all those who sacrificed their lives. We appreciate your sacrifice and we will never go back to war again. And for your children and for the next generations, our unity is our weapon and our weapon is our army. And for all the coming years, for the future will be the days of peace, joy and life, because we were made for life and life was made for us. May you live and may Lebanon live.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a live coverage of a special speech by the Lebanese President Joseph Aoun, who condemned the Israeli occupation forces' attacks on Lebanon and calls for unity to preserve the sovereignty of Lebanon. Russia launched a barrage of drones in an overnight attack on Ukraine, injuring 3 people and causing damage to residential and commercial buildings in Kyiv. Ukrainian emergency services released footage showing a warehouse set on fire due to the attack, though the date and the location of the video could not be independently verified. City officials confirmed multiple commercial buildings were ablaze. Ukraine's air defense systems successfully shot down 56 of the 88 drones launched by Russia. Additionally, 24 drones were redirected using electronic warfare, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. Ukraine's European allies have pledged more than 21 billion euros in new military aid during a meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group in Brussels. British Defense Secretary John Healey confirmed that the agreement would see an increase in weapon deliveries to Ukraine. German Defense Minister announced that Germany would send 4 IRIS-T air defense systems and various other weapons to Ukraine. However, he rejected Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's call for additional Patriot systems, stating that Germany is unable to supply them at the moment as it's awaiting its own deliveries. Moving on, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas said on Saturday there is a possibility of reaching a fair and honorable agreement in the ongoing nuclear talks with the United States, provided both sides approach the negotiation with an equal stance. Speaking to Iranian TV in Oman, Araghchi, who's leading Iran's delegation, confirmed that the negotiations are indirect and focus solely on the nuclear issue, emphasizing that a successful outcome requires a mutual willingness to reach an agreement based on equality. The high-level talks aim to revive negotiations over Tehran's rapidly advancing nuclear program, with U.S. President Donald Trump warning of military action if a deal is not reached. Despite the ongoing talks, Iran remains cautious, skeptical about the potential for an agreement, and wary of Trump's repeated threats to bomb Iran if it does not halt its uranium enrichment program. Japan officially launched the highly anticipated World Expo 2025 in Osaka today with a spectacular opening ceremony blending futuristic innovation and traditional Japanese culture. The ceremony featured addresses from Emperor Naruhito and Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, along with vibrant performances that captivated the audience. In his speech, Ishiba emphasized the importance of global unity, urging nations to collaborate on technological innovation, cultural exchange, and mutual understanding. Running until October, Expo 2025 will showcase groundbreaking innovations in technology, sustainability, and international cooperation. With the theme Designing Future Society for Our Lives, the event aims to bring together over 160 countries to tackle global challenges and co-create a better future for all. A group of around 50 Serbian students cycling in protest against their government departed Munich on Saturday, continuing their 1,300-kilometer journey to Strasbourg. The group left the southern Germany city after an overnight stop, heading towards Ulm as part of their multi-day route through Stuttgart and Karlsruhe before crossing into France on Tuesday. The students who began their protests in Belgrade aim to raise awareness and seek support from European Union institutions in Strasbourg. That brings us to the end of our special coverage. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.